story of stone soup is it's an old story. There's many different tellings throughout Europe. Some places it's known as nail soup. Other places it's known as axe soup. But it's always the same basic story. And it takes place in a post-war time, during a time of great scarcity. And there's a traveler who's wandering through towns, wandering across the countryside, and everywhere he goes, people turn him away. They tell him, we've got no food here, there's no place to stay, go on to the next town, go on to the next village, go on to the next county, you gotta get out of here, there's nothing for you here. And after being turned away a few times, he goes in the center, and it could be a she, they go into the center of town, and they say, you know, don't worry about me, you don't have to feed me, you don't have to house me, I'm gonna go make some stone soup. So word gets out that a villager is going to be making soup, there's going to be food in the village, and people start flocking out all over the place to come to the center of town to see this amazing soup and hopefully to get some. And so he fills his pot with water, and he very ceremoniously pulls out his stone out of a bag very similar to that purple one right there. And he puts that stone in the soup and he starts boiling that soup. And after a while, he's smelling the aromas of the stone soup, and he has his spoon and he's tasting the broth, and he says, "Oh, this is great. I love stone soup. You know what I love even more than stone soup is stone soup with a little bit of cabbage." One of the villagers goes, you know, okay, well, I guess I have a little bit of cabbage, and they go back to their stores where they've hidden away their little bits of this and that, and they bring some cabbage and they put it in the soup. Puts that cabbage in the soup again, lets it boil, smells the aromas, tastes that soup and says, "Oh, stone soup with cabbage, now that is delicious." But there was this one time I had some stone soup with cabbage and a little bit of spiced beef. Now that was stone soup that was fit for a king. Well, the butcher thinks to himself, I got a little bit of spiced beef. He goes back, he gets his spiced beef. He brings that spiced beef and they put it in the soup. And so it goes with potatoes and carrots and onions and garlic and spices and tomatoes and kohlrabi and everything, all the little things that people had in their stores where, you know, they were just eating potatoes because that's all they had. But they brought some of those potatoes. They brought that to the town square. They put that in the soup. And the entire village was fed this amazing soup. Whereas before they would just be eating that kohlrabi. They'd only be eating the carrots they had because they only had a little bit. They didn't actually have enough to sustain themselves. But when they worked together, they had an amazingly nutritious soup. And at the end, the villager packed up his bags and went away, and the traveler and the villagers pleaded, offered him everything they had to be able to buy that stone, but he wouldn't give it to him. But it's a metaphor, and the reason why we retold this story today is because when people worked together, they had much more power. It's a metaphor for building power through collaboration. It's also a metaphor for the lack of food justice, the lack of access and of education around healthy food that exists in our country today. When you can go to any corner store and get what you think is food, in reality it's not. And we're suffering we are really suffering in a time of great scarcity when it comes to healthy food, where in the last 100 years we've lost our seed diversity. And through hybridization and now genetically modification, we're losing different food crops every single year. And so we need a new stone soup. We need to come back together. We've got to rebuild that power, and we have to be fed both physically from the soup, which is what we did today, but also energetically, etherically, from knowing that we're not alone in this struggle. And as you saw today, we had hundreds of people that came out and showed that, and people that came from Ohio, from I think 12, 13, 14 different states. We had people. So there is a movement. We do have a lot of power, and as we work together, as we make our metaphorical stone soups, all we do is build more power, and be it fracking or genetically modified foods or tar sands or the monopolization of water sources, which is another thing that Monsanto is doing, is buying up water aquifers across the country. There's a lot of issues that we're all working on, and I work on a lot of issues myself. But when we come together, that's when we have the most power. So I want to thank you guys all for coming together with us today and making the trip down and meeting in the middle in D.C. And that's the story of Stone Soup.
Very good.
Real Cooperative is my my organization that I run. With a couple of other people, Emma, who was one of our members, and we have and Davey, a number of people that were here today. And we work with a lot of different groups. Right now, we're working with Occupy Monsanto on this. We're also working on a national hemp education tour that's on the road right now to try and get industrial hemp back in the United States, so we can be growing that instead of clear cutting our forests for paper, which is ridiculous.
Guys, is there